President Donald Trump's draft executive order to shut down the U.S. Department of Education. Let's break down what's happening and what it means for students and whether this could actually happen. Trump has drafted an order calling for Education Secretary Linda McMahon to begin the process of dismantling the department. This would be a major shakeup in federal education policy. But here's the big question. Can he actually do it? First, let's talk about what the Department of Education actually does. It was created in 1979 under President Jimmy Carter and has an annual budget of about $80 billion. It oversees student loans, financial aid, Title IX regulations, special education funding, and even maintains massive data records on schools nationwide. The roots of the American education system trace back to the Prussian model, which was designed in the early 19th century to create a disciplined and obedient workforce and military. This model emphasized compulsory schooling, standardized curriculums, and centralized control, principles that were later adopted in the U.S. to shape a system that produces workers rather than critical thinkers. Horace Mann, often called the father of American education, studied the Prussian system and advocated for its implementation in the United States in the mid-1800s. His vision was to create a system that instilled obedience, uniformity, and national cohesion. While this system ensured widespread literacy and structured education, critics argued that it also discouraged creativity, problem-solving, and independent thought, elements crucial for a thriving, innovative society. One of the biggest concerns are student loans. The department currently holds about $1.6 trillion in federal student loan debt. If it's dismantled, those responsibilities would most likely shift over to the Treasury Department. Meanwhile, civil rights oversight could move to the Justice Department, and support for students with disabilities might go to Health and Humane Services. McMahon, during her confirmation hearing, didn't explicitly say she would shut down the department, noting that it would require an act of Congress. And that's a key point. Fully dismantling the agency would need 60 votes in the Senate, which is a high bar to clear. So what's the reaction been? Well, most polls show that Americans are skeptical of eliminating the department entirely. And of course, Democrats and education advocates are pushing back hard, arguing that this could disrupt funding and protections for students. But on the other side, some conservatives in Washington have long argued that education should be handled at the state level, not by the federal government. They believe shutting down the department could reduce bureaucracy and return control to local communities. If the Department of Education were eliminated, states and local counties would regain full control over education policies, funding, allocation, and curricular decisions. Some argue this could lead to more tailored education systems that meet local needs, but others fear it could widen disparities in educational quality between wealthy and poor districts. Now, let's look at a bigger issue. Does our education system even work? Over the past 40 years, the U.S. has significantly fallen in global education rankings. Despite spending more per student than most any other country, we continue to lag behind nations like Finland, Japan, and South Korea in subjects like math, science, and reading. The U.S. spends over $14,000 per student annually. That is just on the federal side. You look at your local counties pay, that's usually $16,000 to $20,000. So that's $30,000 to $35,000 per student, more than most developed nations. Yet our students rank around 30th in math and reading globally. Countries that spend less have better outcomes, suggesting that simply throwing money at the problem isn't the solution. Since the creation of the Department of Education, test scores have largely stagnated, while bureaucracy has increased. Some argue that the state-controlled education could lead to more innovation, competition, and accountability. Others worry that federal oversight is necessary to ensure equal access to quality education for all students. Private versus public education. Let's take a little comparison look into this. One of the key differences between private and public education is the flexibility in curriculum design, teaching methods, and resource allocation. Private schools are not bound by state-mandated curricula, allowing them to adapt more rigorous academic programs, specialized teaching techniques, and smaller class sizes. This often leads to higher student performance, particularly in standardized testing and college admission. Private schools also emphasize discipline, character development, and individualized learning, often with stronger parental involvement. In contrast, public schools must adhere to federal and state guidelines, which can limit innovation and responsiveness to student needs. While public schools provide free education to all students, they often struggle with larger class sizes. Studies show that on average, private school students score higher on standardized tests, graduate at higher rates, and are more likely to attend and complete college compared to their public school counterparts. However, access to private education is limited by tuition costs, which can make it an option only for families with higher incomes. schools. Well, unless maybe there was a voucher system that we could implement. This raises questions about educational equity and whether public education can be reformed to adopt some of the successful strategy used by private institutions. So, is shutting down the Department of Education the answer, or do we need reforms at both the federal and state levels? Let's talk about in the comments. Should local communities have full control over education, or does federal oversight serve an important role? Don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future updates. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one.